Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in and welcome back to our review for Voltron. This is it, the last season. Season 8. This is Ian here along with Chris.
It's over.
It's done. We're
It's done.
I don't know, man. I don't know. You still supercharged with contestants?
Oh my god.
I couldn't help it.
Um.
I couldn't help it.
I don't know, man. Um. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sad. I
Yeah,
don't know. I'm having a hard time collecting my feels.
there's some feels.
Yeah. But no more Voltron. No more Voltron. It's all done.
What a run this has been for
Yeah.
something exclusive for Netflix. It's really cool. This came out of left field. This educated me a bunch. Someone who had not sat down and watched the old school Voltron, getting a chance to really see that now. Chris here filling me in on a lot of the cool throwbacks made, and wow, just what they did with this series. And I'll preface anything we're saying here right with this too. The scale this went to, this got grand. Uh,
Yeah. Yes, it did.
this
Yes, it
gets
did.
crazy. And hey, as an anime fan, the last time I remember anything mecha sci-fi related, I saw animated getting this crazy was Gurren Lagann back in the 2000s. If anybody's seen that, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, this was nuts. Where this goes, and in a way, it, it we've been pointing at stuff like that, with this series, with things they've been pointing at, just with how general Quintessence is and how linked it is to everything else. But with the way they did it, there were some cool surprises here that I didn't expect, that I had a lot of fun with. So
Yeah, so I mean, let's talk about it as a season before we talk about the totality of the
sure,
storyline.
sure.
Well, how do you think this was overall as a season?
As a season, I think this is solid.
Yeah,
This
I agree.
it's if I'm thinking about this, I think it's a fitting way to wrap up the journey we've had so far. And I say that especially as a season because I think this does a little bit less barreling forward right at the start or just slamming you with something out of nowhere, to actually take time and wait a minute and say, okay, let's fill a little bit of this in before we walk you all the way to the end of it, and show you the conclusion of it. I actually
Hmm.
appreciated the pause button because I thought we desperately needed it at the end of last season. Chris and I joked about final boss mode coming out of nowhere with no
Yeah,
explanation. So
yeah. Well, and we get a little bit of that,
we
but
do. We
uh,
do.
it it makes sense though. I guess in the world of Voltron, it made sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the first two episodes of the season did a really good job of laying down the foundation. I mean, I remember our review for season 7 and saying, "Hey, Hagar's still out there,
Yep. Yep.
and that's going to have to be dealt with." And that, she is what do they call her? When it's not Hagar, it's
Uh, she, she always,
Illyria.
yeah, she always went between both names. I mean, they're pretty much interchangeable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's the flow
Remora.
here is Hagar and what she's doing and what she's her misguided attempt at
If you wanted to sum it up, that's a Hunerva, I think.
Minerva.
Hunerva.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and we get the origin of the name change, and they explain, here's the differences, and in the most part they explain what's happened and why this family fell apart.
Right.
So that was good to see the specifics of that. We had not gotten all those specifics before. So yeah, they you'd mentioned that they laid down the foundation for this pretty well. It was just well, okay, so this is what's left. Although there was a bit of that too. There was
Right.
definitely a bit of tying up loose ends in this season. I would say that a fair amount, not too much, but a fair amount of attention was given to, well, this happened earlier in the series, and now we're putting an end to it.
Right. Right. Which is needed. I do want to take a look at as well as we're talking about the way the season was set up. Uh, the amount of different plots casted in this one. Honestly, there's enough material here. I think if they really wanted, I think they could have worked several more seasons out of that.
Mhm.
Out of a few focal things, one of them I'm looking at is like the Galra, the dissident factions that had actually switched sides. on Hagar. There's a lot you could do with that because this is an empire that spanned a huge portion of the universe, and there's all kinds of little subplots and sub stories within that. Also, you look at Hagar turned the idea of the Alteans and what that became. I mean, this went from Princess Allura, the Alteans being completely endangered to wait, hey, there's other Alteans. What does that mean? And to by the end of the series, they're a really important part of the story. So really having that whole society and the concept of converting some of them to complete zealotry by the end of this that's another awesome plot line. And then even beyond that, what you have right at the start of the season, the idea of the huge coalition you have that's originating from Earth now of all kinds of different alien species and people standing against the Galran Empire. So there's a lot. There's a lot here that's shown. There's a lot, I think, to wrap up. But with some of those loose ends placed, I think you do get a bow tie on them.
Yeah. No, the show typically, as it tends to do, especially with its more outrageous storytelling, or at least as far as where the stories are going, it does a good job of really keeping this pretty tight knit. So let's go by this.
Yeah.
And let's give an official warning for spoilers because I want us to have the ability to talk freely about the season.
Sure.
What are some of your favorite things from this season?
I want to take a direct look at something that I just hinted at a second ago, but the concept of the Alteans, I think some becoming zealots and being completely misled, and I only point at that because of the way I think that's so closely tied to how Hagar was built and how we finally get the rest of her backstory. That's something that was very welcome to me. I almost feel that she would have had more impact if we'd had some of that backstory introduced earlier. But finally getting all of that filled in, and really her becoming what the writing I think was saying on the wall. Ever since she was introduced, I'm going all the way back to like the early first season, the epic battle when the Black Lion was lost against the Galran Empire. They take out the Emperor and everything, and then the Black Lion disappears and he disappears. The how powerful her spells were then and the stuff she was wielding. I couldn't help but think, I was like, man, she's pretty ridiculous. Like, if she gets out of control, man, she could be a secondary villain. And it's usually always like that for like the court muse. In stories like this, sometimes they either end up completely manipulating the leader who's at the head and they just take over themselves, like Kefka FF6, or they even just end up really just becoming a force all of their own. But she really had her own motivations. I think I was really wondering, is she in it just to rule the Galran Empire? And absolutely not. She had a very maternal devotion that was twisted, but I really like the direction they took that, and I liked her development into the big bad, into the main villain, because I felt that wasn't out of nowhere. That was on the writing.
Right.
The writing was on the wall the whole time. They just finally filled it in. Other than that, aesthetically, some of the really cool things we saw, I think all the pilots really stepping into their own. We've had these flashes of Voltron calling out cool abilities in the middle of a clutch situation, or like the crazy boosters and stuff like that. Seeing all the pilots being able to manifest their lions to the max. That's not just like the shoulder cannon. That's Laura's scanning abilities, all of that. That was slick. We even had a little bit of multi-missile treatments.
Yeah,
that was
sick.
Did
that before? I thought that was new, wasn't it?
That was new. Yeah,
that's what I thought. It's like, whoa, you guys have been hiding like dozens of missiles this whole time.
Right,
that could have been useful in the past.
Yeah, I'm like, there's so many times this could have saved you. It's like, where did this come from? So, really, I think seeing the team comfortable in their own skin, really comfortable with their own abilities, and being able to manifest that in full. You didn't have any little parts of infighting or bickering. They're over that. There's much bigger things to deal with now, and I think they all understood that, and I think they were all able to pull together to do that.
Yeah. Some of my favorite things from the season, other than what I've already mentioned, the episode Day 47, I thought was really cool.
Oh yeah, the photo, the documentary. episode.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was. I mean, just for animation in general, that was an interesting twist. You don't see something like that too often, or at least done that well.
right,
Kind of a shaky cam, Cloverfield kind of feel to it, especially when they're fighting the giant tentacle monster.
right.
That was interesting. They definitely spent some time getting to know the broader crew of the Atlas. That was interesting. I'll get into that a little bit more as we talk about maybe the future
Sure.
of this universe. But yeah, the White Knight thing, that whole scenario, that two-parter, and talking about,
Yeah,
we got to see the original Paladins again, and
right.
them all working together. Uh, I have to comment just because, especially when you're working with the original Paladins, they never did change their colors, did they? Keith still stayed in red,
Right,
and Lance still stayed in blue,
right.
and Alluра's wearing pink for some fucking reason. She's wearing pink, who knows? But especially when like they were standing next to the original Paladins, it's like, why didn't you guys ever change? They are wearing different uniforms this season, aren't they? But
Uh,
they have the same colors.
right. If it was changes, it was really small aesthetic changes. I
Yeah.
thought like that you had like some extra like around the collars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
I think there were some upgrades. I will note something I didn't like since we're talking about aesthetics a little bit here. And I think I mentioned this at the end of last season. I hate Shiro's new arm. I hate
yeah,
it.
you hate that thing.
I hate that arm. That makes no sense for someone who studied human anatomy and who worked as an artist and in drawings. That thing drives me nuts. It drives me crazy. And then even though in large part I enjoyed the Clear Day episode, he's in an arm wrestling contest. He's like, really?
Right.
I'm like, well, he's got to use his human. No, he's using robot arm in an arm wrestling contest. And then other people had robot arms, and I enjoyed the fact that in the next episode they actually commented on it. It's like, I don't think that was fair that he was able to go in an arm wrestling contest with a robot arm, and then the other guy's like, well, most of them had robot arms. But it's like, I mean, that just opens up to a whole nother thing if you're allowed to use cyborg parts.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
man.
that's kind of messed up. Yeah, and again, I think they wrapped up the story nicely and everything. We'll get into the greater scheme of that as far as the series.
Sure.
But those are some of my favorite things. I just, I really enjoyed this show overall. Season 7 was the low point, but even then it was still pretty good. This overall, this was a solid season, and I like the fact that it wasn't some convoluted plot.
Yeah.
That consumed the whole season and didn't give you time to do or see other things. It was a well-rounded season, especially knowing it's the last one. They took plenty of time to tell a lot of good story.
Yeah, I think the sense of finality to all this, there's a lot of, I think even anime and other animations I could watch that would have stopped where this was just amping up, but this went past the 10 on the scale, which is great. I think there were some points I was expecting, like, all right, well, this is where it caps off, and this is where we're going to say, oh, no, it's not. So, yeah, that was well done.
Well, okay, so let's talk about that because I mean that it's obvious and it's noticeable. I mean, the stakes in this story go pretty extreme. I mean, and in the last couple seasons they've been talking a little bit about multiple dimensions, alternate realities. So it's like, I mean, there's that one point where it's like there's one reality left, and it's like, I'm like, God, this is. I mean, if it wasn't so damn ridiculous, this is some dark shit.
Yeah. I think in fact, one thing we kind of talked and joked about, Honerva / Hagar should get the award for Murderer of 2018, Murderer of the Year. Maybe of ever.
Oh my gosh!
Like, yeah, when they got to the source at that point, and you have to take this in scale. Every single reality she destroyed was an entire universe blinked out. Like,
right. Everything known and unknown.
Like
infinity.
And I think just the concept of in an animation watching multiple infinities blinked out in seconds is pretty mind-boggling in terms of scale. That blew me away, honestly. So
Well, and then even then with they're flying through with Voltron and they're like watching these realities become destroyed and they're like, kid, you gotta go. And it's like,
yeah,
we gotta follow. It's a little jarring.
it is.
It's like, yeah, I suppose. Well, yeah, it's actually crumbling around you, so I guess you can't stay around. But look, the I think there's a couple stories going on here. You have the season story with Hagar and her motivations and everything, and why she's at least doing what she's doing now. And then there's the whole decision: if I can't be happy, no one will be.
Right.
It's. I mean, people like that.
You do.
And it's. And then you have the totality of the story of the whole series, which is light versus dark, staying true to yourself and your motives.
Yep.
And your reasons for doing things, and just choose to do things that are good not just for you but for others as well.
Right.
Don't be a shit, basically.
Right.
This is all about good guys versus shitty people. Greed and pride and thirst for power.
Right.
These are all pretty universal themes. We've seen this time and again. We've never quite seen all realities but one destroyed before. That's kind of a new thing. But the show does it well, and I think, like I said before, I think there was a little bit of a misstep in season 7. Season 7 just didn't jive. I don't think, not as well as others. I mean, this show has been dealing with universal ending stories for a while.
Right.
Although I do think I enjoyed the more grounded stories from the first few seasons, where things weren't so, oh my god, the one false move in this universe is done. But to say if you were to say that you didn't expect them to go to this point, I think would be a little bit untrue. I mean,
I agree.
Whether I like it or not, it's there, and the production staff have always done a pretty good job of dealing with this. Although I think season 6 probably did it the best, especially when you're talking about the whole situation with Keith and Shiro. God, that was good.
Yeah, it was.
When that finally got revealed.
Some of the best animation we had too.
Yeah, which is solid again here. It's been a few seasons since we've complained really about anything with the animation. It looks like in season 4, I think it was, they were trying to get away with some stuff.
Right.
And it's like, no. None of that crap. None of that crap. We expect, top quality production here. Don't go skimping now. They do a good job of it. I typically don't enjoy stories that go this over the top.
Sure.
It can take you out of it, but I think that's part of why this works, is that this show has always done such a good job of saying, look, all right, we're talking about mystical robotic lines that transform and combined and with aliens, and it's in an anime style, and so I think the show for the most part has always done a really good job of all that. What do you think about we finally see things happen with Allura and Lance?
Yes, finally.
Yeah.
I was stoked for Lance, and I guess I like that moment because it was a moment in earnest. He really puts aside all his BS, all the showboating and everything else, and I think for one of the first times he's not just completely honest with himself, his family, honest with Allura. And that's not for, I think, trying to gain any kind of status within the group or anything like that. But he really takes an honest stand about that, and I think he's rewarded for it, which is awesome to see. And so is Allura. This is someone that I think these are two characters early on that people might roll their eyes at. You're like, oh, seriously? Like, there's no way. The hot shot and someone who's actually serious about what she's doing. But when you start to see their common grounds, it works. I think they work well together. Both Allura for her sense of her just dogged motivation towards duty, to not just the Voltron team, but for being an Altean, trying to live up to a huge legacy, and often isolating herself in that. And I think Lance trying to help her see the full picture with that, and sort of bring her out of those real morose moments. That was great, and I thought their
Yeah.
dynamics worked really well together.
No, I agree. In fact, it's because of everything that you said that I wish they would have spent a little bit more time with it. It was an afterthought of a story.
Yeah,
It kind of should have been, especially looking at the season as a whole now, and the whole story that they were going with. But I would have liked to have seen more relationship interaction with the
yeah,
two of them. I think there was some missed opportunities there. That being said, if they also would have gone further into that, it may not have allowed for the storytelling that they wanted.
true.
So I'm a little conflicted about that. Overall, though, I think they could have done a little bit more with that. And going into a larger topic of that, though, one of the things I really did enjoy from the season was how they took an opportunity to kind of intermingle all these different aliens and some of
Yeah,
the interesting things that came with that.
yeah, for sure. And this ties into what you were pointing at with loose ends as well. It's easy when you're building a story this that spans itself like this and that covers so much ground to sort of cover over some of the places they visited, or have certain worlds or peoples be just insignificant, just a bump in the road. But they weren't here. I think they all really came together in their own way, and not just the really important figures like the Galra, or like the Blade of Remora characters, or any of Lotor's generals. All those stories play in as well. But a lot of the prior planets visited, and showing how important their knowledge was, their skills still are, and everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. I'm really glad that wasn't forgotten. In the craziness you have coming here, because that would have been a really easy step to do, and I think something expected in a show like this.
So,
Great.
what do you think about Voltron and Atlas becoming a super transformer
Haha, dude.
at the end?
It had to happen. Like, by the time they started going into like reality breaking levels, I'm like, all right, they've hit Gurren Lagann scale. I'm expecting them to combine soon. They have to. Like, especially once we see that crazy fusion between Hagar's pure, quintessence Altean mech, and she fuses with Lotor's mech. I'm like, all right. Voltron is bound to get a crazy upgrade at this point. I thought it fit. I thought it was super crazy. It was awesome, and it was coolest because they got a ridiculous, like, Excalibur style broadsword that rocked. Love that
That's
thing.
true. I gotta be honest. I agree with everything you're saying, but it's only because they took it there, and it's like you said, that needed to happen.
Right.
I generally would have liked that it not had happened.
Right. Right.
Now that being said, that yeah, we got that cool sword, and we got all the lions. So you get the paladins plus Shiro together again. That was pretty cool.
That was cool.
Although we didn't see much of that. We did see a little bit of it. Yeah, but I mean, overall, it's only because at that point things are so freaking over the top that
Yeah.
it's like in most situations I would not have enjoyed something like that.
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah, it was okay.
Right.
The sword was cool.
Yeah, fair enough.
The sword was cool. But yeah, when you're trying to save all realities, yeah, you might need to combine your forces here.
Some drastic steps are needed. I think in all of that, probably the only, I think, really, really, really crazy moment for me was when like the God boosters activated. Like, I'm talking about the 20 times the size of the scale of fused Voltron Atlas boosters. Those were ridiculous.
Yes, they were. It's like, where did that come from?
I'm like, at that point, would that just send you just spinning? Because I mean, you just strapped like 50 NASA rockets on yourself. Like, that was nuts. One thing I do want to point out as far as like the tech and some of the rapid evolution we see with things. Now, here was a big surprise for me. Sort of little minor complaint too. I think they call them the Row Beast, the really powerful Altean mechs, aka the Season Enders from season 7. We went from literally having that thing being the in boss of season 7, the super boss effectively that took the combined might of everything to barely eke out a win, to dealing with like many of these things. I mean, at once, sometimes like 3, 4, and like 5. And I mean, there'd be cases where circumstances get really bad or like they'd be outnumbered. But I'm not talking about just Voltron taking these things on. We had times where just Lions were taking these on, and that was a real surprise to me. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you can fill in the dots a bit about that if you want. Okay, either veteran pilot ship or extra powers now from quintessence or whatever you want to fill in about it. Okay, it doesn't break the story, but that kind of jarred me at first. I'm like, wait, we just went from taking everything to deal with one to we can deal with them with a few lions. I'm like, wow, okay. So
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's been kind of a thing with the show, though, is that once they've defeated something, now they can defeat it all the time.
yeah, it is.
That's been kind of a thing that they do. It's kind of that, taking steps up, and so now that you've done it, it's no longer a thing.
Right.
Yeah, there's some legitimate complaints about that. Geez, what was I gonna say? Okay, help me out here. I'm confused.
Yeah.
I'm confused. So when Hagar brought Lothor back from
Right.
Quintessence, what does it say? Quintessence?
There you go.
There you go. From that world that was like full of quintessence or whatever.
Right.
So he's dead, right?
Right. Yes.
Okay. So what was the point of that?
Okay. See,
I'm a little confused. Did
see,
she know he was dead?
you know what? I don't think she had. I don't know about him specifically. Now let's look at this, and this shows how much of a megalomaniac for power she was at this point. Her main focus was that mech. She needed his suit because the key behind that, the suit.
Oh,
was,
she needed the suit.
Yeah, because the idea was his suit was the one that had quote unquote pierced the veil, right? And it had the ability to travel between. It could break planar boundaries.
Hold on. I need to interrupt, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
but
go ahead.
When we say suit, do you mean that giant mech machine that he had, or like the suit he was wearing?
She needed his giant scorpion mech.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now I understand. Okay. All right. But help me out here. When they pulled that thing out, wasn't it fighting?
Yes, immediately was.
So who was piloting that?
Here's the thing. At that point, this is what I surmised from it. At that point, that thing was so juiced with pure quintessence, especially from not just being there so long. I know that word, right? Not just from being there so long in that field and everything that happened like with Voltron, but she had the ability to manipulate it. Her whole point is she'd gone through the Guardian. She had the enhanced Altean abilities now, kind of like what the princess gained, right? So when she pulled that, when that came out and she pulled Lotor's mech, she was able to control it effectively. I mean, you saw the staggering amount of energy she was able to kind of manipulate and move around already. So it really wasn't much of a stretch that she could control that as well. And I don't know if she immediately knew he was dead, and if you were confused on that, it's pretty obvious that he is, in the very end because you see his spirit, with everybody else. But even so, her obsession, I think, went beyond just him, but also continuing his legacy and then what his suit was able to do. She, at all costs, wanted a reality where she'd be able to just be a mother, to just return to the way things were and just leave it at that. But no, that was the whole point. I mean, if she could get Lotor out of it, I think great, but she needed that suit to execute her master plan. And like she couldn't have done it without that. So
right, because that thing could pierce other realities.
Yep.
Right. Okay, so here's the thing. Okay, so when did we learn that Hagar could pilot giant mech stuff?
Oh, see, there's one. I think this is where they make a skip. I don't think we ever had that.
No,
There's
I don't think we did either. I think it was just like, hey, look, I'm also a witch, but I'm
yeah,
also a 5-star pilot.
exactly. Like there's nothing to explain that. She's always been, a master, like, magic weaver and manipulating energy and stuff, but that we have no tangible base that, hey, she happens to be a really good pilot too. No, she was a researcher in the past.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I'm going to leave that into probably my sole complaint about the show as a whole, um, in large part, which is that, look, the show's always done a fairly good job, especially dealing with these insane scenarios of giving you an explanation
Right.
as to how or why. But there are times, and this is one of them, where it's like, okay, your enemy will be what we need it to be.
Exactly.
And sometimes not just the enemy, but other things as well. Look, I mean, for storytelling and as an animation, Voltron has done an exceptional job. But there are times where you see this, and this is one of them. It's like, and that's the first thing I noticed. Like, all right, well, okay, so she's no longer dressing like a witch. She's dressing up like what are they called?
An Altan.
Altaeans,
Yeah.
and that made sense. It was like, okay, well, look at that mech suit. Whoa, look at that pilot suit she's in now. And she's just flying it, and she's the most dangerous thing.
Yep.
I think it could have done a little bit more to see that typical kind of grounding that the show has done in the past. If they would have explained that it's not actually her, but she had a really dangerous crew that was doing these things. I mean, she's not just driving, a giant space mech thing. She's driving the giant space mech thing.
Yep.
And she's able to control this thing. I mean, the Atlas has a whole crew.
Right.
And when that thing morphed and like merged with Lothor's, I mean, that thing was huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was no sense of scale of that when it first happened.
No. And
it was,
and the crazy part is, I think that could have been explained through a relatively easy route. We get into part of what I like to call magic stew syndrome. When you have something like a really powerful force in the universe. In this case, we're introduced to the Altean energy, the quintessence and all that stuff. It could, look, even a branch as simple as when you pass through the Guardian, when you become one of the Chosen, you can access that knowledge. That knowledge extends to different piloting systems or things like this. Something even within that. Like, I think just because she was like a walk-in library at that point, there's some parts that would not have made that such a stretch. I'd get it. So,
I mean, it's such a big deal that you have these paladins of the Lions and how they were chosen and stuff. And I know we don't have that background when it comes to what. I don't even think we got a name for that machine she was running.
We didn't.
But it's like it's equal, and not only equal but far superior in power.
Yeah.
And it's like, but okay, so Witch Lady can just drive this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is me kind of looking back, and I know that hindsight being what it is, and Monday morning quarterbacking and all that thing. I believe in earlier seasons of the series, they did a better job of explaining these things or setting things up to where they made a little bit more sense. And I think it was some of my complaints in the last season. And again, I mean, looking at the totality of everything, it's all right, especially when we're looking at the totality of universe-ending scenarios like we got, all but one, in fact.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, there's it's gotten a little sloppier in the latter half of the series.
And I think here, real quick, this is the progression ladder to compare. I'm looking at Emperor Zarkon's suit at the end of the original season. Quite a bit of explanation was put into that, by the way. Let's jump all the way to the season 7 ender and then to the current one now. You see a clear difference in the way those are introduced and I think described. So,
but overall, or Ian, are there any other specifics from the series or the season that you'd like to talk about?
No, I think hey, that really covers really the majority of what I'd actually looked at from scale to aesthetics to everything else. I think I'm rounding the corner for getting into rating territory, man.
Okay, so I think it's only fitting. We're going to do a 1 out of 5. We do 1 out of 5 Lions.
Cool.
So we'll do the season and then we'll do the series.
Okay, deal. For For this season, look, there are the complaints. It's not, perfection, but this was an enjoyable ride. Like I haven't seen this kind of scale in animation in years. Had a lot of fun with it. I'm giving it 4 out of 5 lions.
Yeah, I'm going to give it the same for the season. 4 out of 5. It was a lot of fun. There's a couple things I'm going to talk about at the back end of this.
Sure.
But yeah, 4 out of 5 lions. I think for the season. What do you have for the whole series?
Okay, now this is also out of 5 lions, right?
That's right.
Okay. As a whole, this is a solid animation, man. I mean, I'd recommend this to anybody who wasn't just a Voltron fan, but also if you're just in sci-fi mecha. This is a good one to tune into. I think there's a lot more good that outweighs some of the negative here and the shortcomings it has, because they are there. But if I were to take this thing as a whole, I'm gonna actually settle on the series for the same rating, 4 out of 5 lions.
Okay.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit higher. I'm going to go 4.5.
Fair enough.
And yeah, I think this one gets a little bit more of an extra nod for me because it actually got me to sit down and watch an anime style show.
Right.
Which is not easy.
That never. Hey, and I got to highlight this for context. I can't even get this guy to sit down and watch 08th MS Team Gundam or anything like that. And I'm like, I know you'd like that. Oh. So.
Yeah, no, it's not easy. I'm very, very picky about my animation.
Right.
It's been said time and again. If you listen to our weekly podcast, I'll just rail on anime. I'll go to town. I'll be Hagar destroying all with anime. I'll just do it. No, but I saw this one when they were first doing previews, and Voltron came out of my childhood. I didn't see it much, but I mean, it was it was more the mystique around the show than it was actually being able to watch it when I was a kid. DreamWorks has done a great job with this. DreamWorks and Netflix. This has been a great series. I will probably at least go back and watch the first couple seasons at some point, just to be reminded of those more grittier days of the show and the
Sure.
and the characters. Yeah, 4.5. This and it does get a nod for actually getting me hooked on an animated show. It does not happen. This has been a great ride. Got a little bit too crazy at the end, but overall, great ride. Okay, so 2 things that I want to bring up. First thing, we forgot to mention specifically about Allura's death.
Yes.
I don't even know if there's even too much to say here, but we didn't talk about that, so let's talk about that real quick. What did you think of that? That came out of nowhere.
It did. If anything, that like you said, I think that's what makes her ultimate relationship with Lance more of an afterthought, because this is so bittersweet. It's something that really never even gets much of a chance to blossom, but there really is a certain I guess certain irony in that. I know in earlier seasons I was really wondering if things were going to get to that point where she had to sacrifice herself, and I hope not, because I said, man, if Allura goes, that would feel really cliche. But the reason why I didn't feel that way as much here was because, look, at that point she's one of the only ones who can. There's basically 2 beings in existence at that point who had walked through that gate to gain the knowledge needed to do what needed to be done, and you understood with her stance, not just an Altean, but as a paladin of Voltron, what she was going to do. So I didn't feel it was as much of a sellout in that regard. I didn't feel she was propped up just to do that. I felt circumstances got so extreme that ultimately that came up, and that sucks. It really does. I'm not saying that just for Lance's sake. It sucks. I really liked Allura as a character, but based off of what we're given, and I think the skill sets everybody has there, it's just one of those really, really tough decisions. And in all this, I was saying to myself the whole time, I'm like, man, I want the whole crew to come out, but I just don't see everybody coming out of this. I just don't. I didn't know who, but yeah.
That's interesting. I have a completely different view on that. I mean, I thought it was fine, in fact, but in all honesty, I mean, you're saying that you had said that in seasons past, you're thinking at some point she's going to have to go, or they may do that.
Mm-hmm.
It was a complete surprise for me.
Mm,
It was a complete surprise. But then when they did, it was like, you know what? That makes complete sense.
it does.
Um, but yeah, I didn't see it coming at all.
Right.
Not
Right.
one bit. Yeah, I thought it was good fitting, and I think that scenario, at least for me, and where I was coming from, and when it happened, and then thinking about the just how that affected the story, I think right there is a good example of really good story writing that we've dealt with for 8 seasons.
It is.
Um, when they did it, and yeah, I thought it was a good job.
Yeah.
Um, it was really interesting at that point, and one of the I think it was Hunk that said, well, we need you because we need you for the Lions, and she's like, oh, you don't need the Lions anymore.
Right. Right.
Lions are done. The Lions are going to retire. Yeah, that's over. And I'm like, oh yeah, I suppose so. I suppose it's all done.
Right.
It's all done. And then you're like, that's right. I'm watching the last episode, aren't I? So all that being said, I guess the last thing I'll point at, and we talked a little bit about this. In fact, we went a little bit into detail about this. The future,
Yes.
and
Yes.
do we get a spinoff? Is there going to be a sequel or a spinoff? And we talked a little bit about this, and now we're getting to even grayer territory. Now we're talking about other Voltrons, to which there's 2 other Voltrons. We don't ever see them in the show, but they existed. There was 2 others. There was Vehicle Voltron, and I don't even remember what the other one was.
Right.
That's how little I know about that one. But there's Vehicle Voltron, and there were definitely hints and nods towards the Vehicle Voltron in this season.
Big time.
Do you think they'll do it?
You know, with this season wrapped up as it is, it's hard to see a nod like that and think that there's nothing that all that can come out of that. I think the door's open. I definitely think the door's open for something else to evolve based off of those. Now, if I had not seen the prehistory, you pointed this out to me, with Vehicle Voltron and stuff, I wouldn't be saying that. But it does feel strange to make huge references to stuff like that and sort of just leave it on its own. I think whatever's done is going to happen with the very distant consult of the current group. I think you definitely move on to a different team. I mean, you'd be following a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But I could see it. I could see it, especially. I mean, we don't see the numbers for this in Netflix, of course, but I think after a pretty widely successful run that this Voltron was.
I hope they at least do some kind of miniseries, some 8-episode something or other. And I would prefer that they continue on, but yeah, especially there in the last 10 minutes or so, there's a couple pretty heavy nods to the other Voltron, the other major Voltron, and I hope we see something. This show's done as long as it's the same production crew,
Right.
because if we're gonna get different people behind it, then no.
I agree.
Yeah, but yeah, if we're gonna have in large part the same crew working on it, yeah, come on, let's move forward.
Yeah.
You're taking away my Voltron here, so give me a new Voltron. But yeah, okay, so something so there's possibility there. Now I tried to do some research about it, and there's been nothing concrete said as far as what I could find. So who knows? Who knows? But yeah, I think the story of the Lions and these characters, I think that's done.
Yeah.
But I think there's definitely room for other stuff in the future.
Cool. No, right with you, man.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think we've rounded our bend for Voltron. Hey, if you guys have stuck with us into this, thank you so much for listening. And please, if you missed some of our episodes, some of our review episodes in between, I recommend, hey, you go check those out. We would love to hear feedback from you from any of those, and also from this review too. Hey, any comments you have, we'd love to hear them. The likes, any subscribes, all that good stuff helps us not just build this channel, but helps us keep producing vids like this and hopefully more reviews in the future. So, hey, we've immensely enjoyed this. Hope you guys get out there and check out Voltron if you haven't done so already. For now, this is going to be it for us, but stay tuned right here on this channel for plenty more. Until next time, guys, hey, thank you all for tuning in. Happy holidays. Take care. Hey people, thank you for tuning into this episode and taking a listen. If you like our content, if you like what you're listening to, or anything we go over, hey, please, we would not only love to hear more from you, but it'd be great if you could throw some support. You can subscribe right below. Also, you can toss us a line anytime. That's ksawmedia@gmail.com. Of course, you can tune in for our channel anytime for movie reviews, game reviews, a lot of random wacky stuff. Who knows what you'll hear. And of course, our episode each week where we're bringing the nerdiest things we can find, dig up, and maybe not find. Maybe the stuff that just drops in our laps. But anyway, hey, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for listening. We hope to hear from you again later. Take care.